the Bible is different from any other sacred text, such as could be Quran or the works of Buddha or the literature of Veda and other books that are considered to be sacred in other religions. Bible is considered to be a sacred text for three major monotheistic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Yes, Islam too, in spite of the fact that Quran in Islam is considered the sacred book. Quran cannot be understood without a Bible. The story of a colleague of mine who is working in Jordan as a Russian-speaking tour guide. She was born in Russia, Soviet Union, and married a Jordanian man, and so she and her husband and their newborn daughter moved with his family in Amman, Jordan. And of course, back in those days, the early 80s, she was probably a member of a young communist league, considered her Christian, as she said. No, she was an atheist. I don't know what her in-laws considered her in their Jordanian Muslim Arab frame of references, but of course they wanted to convert her to Islam. And it was not easy. First of all, she was on a learning curve to learn Arabic. Second of all, besides her struggle with Arabic language, whatever they tried to explain to her about Quran, Prophet Muhammad, and Islam, she could not wrap her mind around it. Finally, in desperation, her father-in-law called the Bible Society and got her a Russian Bible. And there she read about Abraham, who in Quran is called Ibrahim, Dawood, who in the Bible is called David, Yusuf, who in the Bible appears as Joseph, Musa, the biblical Moses, and Isa, Jesus, and Miriam, his mother. And she finally understood what Quran is talking about. Why am I spending such a long time explaining to you this concept? Not only because Muhammad, the author of Quran, refers to the Torah, and the Injil, the New Testament, as a sacred text, but he constantly alludes in his writings to the history which is portrayed in the Bible. In this context, it is absolutely weird to hear today from some clerics from the Al-Aqsa Mosque on the Temple Mount the story that Jews have never lived in Jerusalem. These statements are ridiculous not only because they are against what the archaeology discovers, the archaeological digs, but also because they stand in contradiction with what has been recorded in Quran. So one of the aspects of the uniqueness of the Bible which I want to touch on is that Bible presents to us a coherent history. Bible presents to us a coherent history of the people of God, people of the covenant, known as Israel. Why do I speak about coherent history? Because unlike Quran that alludes to this history, and as in the case with my colleague, she could not understand what Quran speaks about until she read a coherent history in the Bible. But it is also interesting that there is no alternative historical book which covers the history of Israel from the age of patriarchs, which is 2nd millennium BC, to the age of Jesus, which is 1st century AD. Oh, of course, we have Josephus's Antiquities, but we have to admit that Josephus's writing is clearly based on the biblical story, plus maybe a couple traditional stories that existed at his age. There is no other ancient document, and we have established in our previous section of our lecture that Bible is indeed the ancient book. So there's no other ancient document that would be complete and coherent. However, there are many ancient documents that give us the stories which concur with what the Bible tells us. For example, the Chronicles of Sennacherib talk about his campaign in Judea and his capture of the Judean city of Lachish and the siege of Jerusalem. At this time, King Hezekiah ruled Jerusalem. The stele of Mesha, who was the Moabite king, mentioned in the Bible, also known as Black Obelisk, which was found in the desert around in Jordan, brings to us the light about the Moabite kingdom, and whatever is written on the stele of Mesha has has concurred with the story of the Bible. The most important of it is that the 19th century critical scholars did not believe that David, King David, was a historical person. And that's why when the archaeologists were able to read the name David on the Mesha stele, it was a really fascinating discovery. And so, this is what I really am passionate about the Bible. This is why I take tour groups to Israel, so that people would not be like worshiping the places where Jesus or David or other biblical characters walked, but that people would be able to eyeball the history of the Bible, which is very much present and transparent in Israel today. One of the interesting examples I want to tell you about is the Dead Sea. This is a very unique formation. There is probably some similarities between the Dead Sea and Great Salt Lake. But I doubt that the Dead Sea and Great Salt Lake, being also a very salty lake, are similar, have similar chemical components. No single organism lives in the Dead Sea. In fact, if you want to have your boat and you drive the boat, your truck with the boat on a trailer, and want to lower your boat and take a nice speedy ride at the Dead Sea on your nice speed boat, you probably will have to say goodbye to that boat after that ride, because its bottom, its propeller engine, or if it's a jet, then it's the entire engine, will be corroded after such an adventure. This is what's interesting about the Dead Sea. The scholars, of course, when they see that this is the lowest point on Earth, they speak about the seismic activity and the platform separations. So their theory is that millions of years ago, the African platform moved away from the Arabian platform, and it created this rift. But it is also interesting that Dead Sea is the lowest point on Earth. The second lowest point on Earth, below the sea level, is the Death Valley, California. But Dead Sea is more than a Death Valley. It goes 1,200 feet below the sea level, which means it is especially funny to climb the mountains around the Dead Sea, because you climb below sea level. And so you start with minus 400 meters and end up to zero. So I did climb the mountain, I am 0 feet now. Well, this is what the Bible speaks about the creation of the Dead Sea. Let's take a look at Genesis chapter 14. And it came to pass that in the days of Amraphel, the king of Shinar, Arioch, the king of Elasar, Kedorlaomer, the king of Elam, Tidal, the king of nations, that they made war with Bela, king of Sodom, Birsha, king of Gomorrah, Shiha, Nab, king of Amda, and Shemeber, king of Zebolim, and the king of Bela, that is Zoar. Well, all these names sound very strange, so not English, so boring. I just lead you to the following fact, that all these join together, so the battle between the kings in Canaan and the kings from Mesopotamia occurred in the valley of Siddim. That is the Salt Sea. What do we have here? We're talking about the event that occurred during the lifetime of Abraham, which is 1800 BC, roughly. 18th century BC. Who is writing about this? Moses, which is 14th century, 1400 BC. So Moses retroactively looks at the event, so whatever was revealed to Moses states that what now is a salt sea, in Hebrew Yam HaMelech, or Dead Sea in English, used to be in the time of Abraham a valley where they had a battle. So this is what's today we see on a satellite. So unlike the evolutionary interpretation, and we see it very clearly, why take this example? Because this example shows how to differentiate between what we observe and how we interpret our observation. Both evolutionists and creationists observe the same phenomena. The phenomena is we have a very, very deep rift. And we have a body of water with a very, very unusual chemical composition, which prevents any living organism from living there. The reason why salt is not really a proper word here. When we talk about salt, even the sea salt, there is a potassium there, correct? Sodium, sorry. There's a sodium there. And the regular salt, which we use for our needs, as sodium chloride, correct? There is no sodium chloride in this blue water, or turquoise, whatever the shade of blue it is. It's beautiful when you look at it in the sun. It's really beautiful. It's so clear. But it's potassium chloride. And you don't want to confuse and spice your soup with potassium chloride. I don't think it is going to be good for your health to ingest potassium chloride. So that's why the sea is dead. And that's why it was in 1997, I took a group of ministers from Russia and Ukraine to the trip on Israel, and we walked on the beach of the Dead Sea, and one minister, a friend of mine, looked at the nice, beautiful rocks, just pebbles, and he said, "Oh, my daughter, she loves aquarium. She will love these rocks." So he picked up a bag full of these rocks, brought it all the way to Nizhny Novgorod, Russia, and his wife looked at this gift, and she was a smart woman. She boiled these rocks in the water for 6 hours. After that, she cooled them, dried them, and put them in an aquarium. And the entire fish in the aquarium went belly up. So, this is the facts. A believer in God and in His Word like me will attest to this fact. And the evolutionist will attest to this fact. It's how do we interpret what happened? So we heard the evolutionary interpretation that it was a rift due to a seismic activity caused by the shift of the platform X million years ago. What it doesn't explain is why does this water have such a nice turquoise color and such a toxic chemical components? Well, the Bible gives us an interesting story. What Genesis chapter 14 verse 3 tells us is that while Moses knows about the existence of that sea, he was told that at the time of Abraham there was no Dead Sea. There was a valley where the battle took place. So, we'll continue explaining and exploring the Bible. Here's another text from the book of Genesis. And this text is telling us about how the area looked in the time of Abraham. This is the map as we know it today. This is Israel, this is West Bank, this is the Dead Sea, and that's the border between Israel and Jordan. This is the Red Sea. Over here, there is a highway. And this area is called the Desert of Negev. So here is the Sea of Galilee, and this is the River Jordan that flows from the Sea of Galilee and falls into the Dead Sea. So that's kind of like two conjoining vessels. The Sea of Galilee is about minus 300 feet below the sea level, and this one is minus 1,200 feet below the sea level. That's what creates. But here's what we see, what Lot saw while they were here in Negev, because the book of Genesis chapter 13 begins how Abraham was in Egypt and moved up to Negev, and they settled there, and they were basically raising the sheep, and there was not enough place. And so he talked to his nephew Lot, and he says, well, if there is not enough space, but if you want to be, to separate from me, choose. You go either right and I go left, you go left, I go right. So that's how it went. Lot lifted up his eyes and saw all the plain of Jordan, that it was well watered everywhere. And look at this. Before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, like a garden of the Lord. If you go with me to Israel, the most boring drive, similar to the drive from here on I-80 through Nevada, up to Reno. This is the same, probably close distance. You're going to drive on the absolute arid desert known as Arava. And what you will see a little depression that looks like a dry river bed. But there's no river. But the book of Genesis tells us that there was a river. Well, River Jordan ends here. And if they're here in Negev and they see river and they see it's watered, what it means? It means that from the Sea of Galilee, actually the River Jordan starts here. See, this is Mount Hermon. That's around this. They have two streams that start Jordan River, and it goes there. So before the Lord destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah, River Jordan could go all the way to the Red Sea. What do you need for the river to go into the sea? A constant slope. So it means that if he sees that the River Jordan was able to make to the sea level, the River Jordan was not below the sea level. What it tells us is that the Bible gives us its version of the geological history of the creation of the Dead Sea, which is something happened which basically refers to the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah as some kind of a catastrophic event that changed the landscape. Well, the book of Genesis explains to us what happened. It says here that the Lord rained brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of heavens. This is what happens. This is the description. The brimstone and fire. Well, when we talk about these words in that language, in today's language, we understand there has to be some kind of chemical products in there. And we see two things in a Dead Sea. Number one, we see an oily component in the water. I don't have this Bible text in my slides, but according to Genesis chapter 14, the valley of Siddim, as it was described there, had tar pits. What are these tar pits? Tar is a heavy fraction of oil which seeps into the surface of the earth, and that's how we can mine asphalt. And in Canada, in Alberta, they have lots of tar sands that they make into a gasoline eventually, which they discuss it takes too much energy and so forth. But this is the concept. I tell you, I dreamed to swim in the Dead Sea. So when I arrived in Jordan, first time in my life, in 1997 on archaeological dig, then my wife came after the dig and we spent several days together. I say to her, we need to go to the Dead Sea. So we rented the car from Amman, Jordanian side, and we went all the way down to the Jordanian side of the Dead Sea. When I touched this water with my feet and my hands, it didn't look right, didn't feel right. I wasn't enjoying. Some people do enjoy. But if you want to have an impression of a Dead Sea, this is what you need to do. Take a heavy oil which is used, the heating oil, pour it about a bucket of the heating oil into your bathtub, pour the bucket of potassium chloride into your bathtub, and then fill it with the water. You'll get a Dead Sea. So enjoy your bath.
I heard it smells. Does it smell?
No, this one, it doesn't smell actually, but the component, the oiliness, it's the same as you take a heating oil into your fingers, and it's going to be the same. It's just diluted. This is how it feels. So the biblical story is consistent. There is an oil in the Dead Sea. The question is, what else in the Dead Sea, and where the potassium chloride come from? The Bibles, the geologists have no consistent explanation. The Bible seems to imply that the potassium chloride and some other components come from heaven with the rain. This was a part of a judgment. Well, what happens? That was quite a rain, I can tell you, because going back, I'll show you the terrain. This is minus 1,200 feet. For Jordan to be able to reach Red Sea, it has to be at least plus a couple feet above the sea to create some semblance of the slope. Well, now if we are here, which is Jerusalem and the Judean desert is about 800 feet above sea level. And then this is Jordanian side, and again you see the mountain range here and the mountain range here, right? This is also about 800 to 1,000 feet above sea level. Actually, no, I'm wrong. It's it's in meters, so it's 2,500 feet above sea level. Here and here, all this average about 2,500 feet, 2,000 feet, 2,500 feet above sea level. And this is 1,200 feet below sea level. So this rain smacked this area so hard that the surface of the earth dropped down about 4,000 feet. That was something. That was something. We can see it. You know, the mountains here, the mountain there, they were joined and then they kind of split open. This was quite a catastrophic event. Well, if you ever go with me to the Bible Land exploration tour, I'll take you to this mountain slope. This is the Dead Sea, this is Jordanian side. See, this is Israel, and that's the mountains I was talking about. These are these mountains. So here they are, see, in a haze. This is, you see the mountain goes up, that's Jordanian side. That's the valley. This is 1,200 feet below sea level. This is, and over here, 800 feet above sea level. Okay? So you go on this switchbacks. This way, this way, this way, and you get to this. That's on the ridge. It's about, you have to go up about 3,000 feet this way. So, what's that? Molten granite. Everywhere. This thing is called Cave of Lot. Whether or not Lot and his daughters were there, nobody can tell. There was a Christian monastery there at some point, and according to the legend which was presented in this Christian monastery, why they were there, that's what they said, that was a Cave of Lot. We can't either confirm or deny it, but we can observe the molten granite. What kind of temperature needed to melt the granite? In my estimation, about 3,000 degrees. That's about it. That's not basalt. And this is also interesting. The evolutionists say that there was a volcano. Because, yeah, volcano could melt granite. But volcano would have lava. And lava rock is basalt. Basalt is nowhere to be found. So, where is this molten granite coming from? My answer is from that rain, from heaven. So, indeed, Bible is unique. In many other aspects, in the way how the Bible presents divine justice and human path to soundness and of the mind and spirit, I can talk many more hours, but I picked the history because it's subjective. We have other different philosophers talk about different aspects of justice and lifestyle, you name it. But this book is definitely the most ancient and coherent. It was preserved, as we spoke in the first lecture, and what we have with us is a collection of some Bible artifacts, which it's kind of a movable museum where we show different manuscripts of the Bible, and I'll be happy to give you a tour.